David had been waiting for a long time. His first test run was months ago, and today he finally succeeded. Surely now they would let him be one of the climbers. David took a deep breath and walked into the viewing room. "Great job," said the judge. "I think you finally have the chops to be a climber." David grinned as he shook his hand and headed home. He collected his things in his travel bag and set off for the main gate. When he got there, he told the gate man that he had finally passed the test and received his climber badge. After passing the gate, he looked across the red landscape and saw it. The tall spire. The spire he had wanted to ascend since he was a child. The one that inspired him to get his climber badge and leave the village for the first time. He was going to climb it. David ran intermittently, determined to reach the spire before nightfall. He needed to get straight to climbing in the morning if he wanted to make it to the top. David reached the spire an hour before sunset, dug himself a small hole in the ground, and covered it up with his false grass blanket. He did not want to deal with the vultures before his climb. David woke to wretched metallic sounds. Vultures retreating to the spire. He checked if the coast was clear and rushed to the close wall. One of those clear rocks, 5 rows up, was broken. There was a hole just big enough for him to crawl through. He braced against the clear rocks and grabbed a metal tube against the wall, hauling himself up over the first row of clear rocks. Then the next, and the next. Inside these many rooms of clear rocks, he saw black cubes, much the size of a human, with glowing dots. It didn't make sense, but then again, nothing on the spires made sense. He kept going, more black rectangles and squares, and as he made it up to that hole in the wall, he hauled himself through, sweating profusely from his climb. He stopped to catch his breath and headed to a pillar in the center of this interior area. The side of the pillar was open, and there were stairs carved from volcanic rock inside. David began to climb up these stairs. The stairs had an abrupt end to them, as if long ago the volcanic rock had collapsed from beneath. But there was still a small lip of rock around the edge of the inside of the cylinder. David grabbed onto the ledge and dropped his body down, sidling along the remaining pieces, and slowly spiraling upwards. His new pace was a crawl compared to before, and soon his arms became tired. He continued along the ledge until he reached another opening in the wall. David's arms burned as he hauled himself upwards, pulling harder and harder. His legs scrambled. He finally made it over that ledge and began to drag himself forward. "Damn it," he whispered to himself. David got up and looked around. Then he froze. There were vultures everywhere, all seemingly sleeping except for the one that walked towards him. They shouldn't be awake during the day. David tried to hold his breath as the vulture walked forward. It investigated him curiously. The light from its eye turned from yellow to green for just a moment before it walked away. David didn't know why they would only attack you if you moved, but they would. Something was strange about them. David looked at the vulture closer as it began to walk away, following closely and quietly behind it. Its body was metallic and cubic, almost unnatural in the way it moved. It didn't breathe. It clicked every other step, and it whirred when it moved its head. What kind of creature made such sounds? What kind of creature didn't breathe? What kind of creature did any of this? Suddenly the vulture whipped around, smacking David's head sideways with its wings. He hit the wall. He tried not to groan with pain and not to move as the vulture stared at him. It then continued moving, walking right past him. He sat there, waiting for it to go somewhere out of sight, anywhere where it would not see him if it turned. And eventually it did. But it came right back. It followed the same path exactly, rhythmic in its steps. Strange, he thought to himself. But now that he knew how it moved, he could move with it. He followed its path closely, walking as silently as possible. He knew that if he could reach the part just behind its last turn, he could get in that small cave up on the ceiling. David tiptoed around the vulture and crawled up into that small ceiling cave. Its path was linear, but zigzagged, up and flat and up and flat. He followed it, continuing upwards. He was, after all, trying to climb the spire. He finally reached another opening into a large room. This room, too, had vultures, but none of them moved. He stayed still and watched just to make sure. He dropped down from the ceiling cave into the room and walked around, looking for any way to continue upwards. There was that cylinder in the middle of the room, just like the last one. But would the stairs inside be intact? Only one way to find out. He carefully eased open the door. There were stairs, but he didn't trust them this time. They were cracked and seemed to be crumbling away at the edges. He knew that something cracked like that would shatter if he stood upon it. So he didn't take the staircase. He walked to all of the little clear rocks on the walls. He could see outside. The sun was setting, and he was only halfway up the spire. This was bad. Very, very bad. David began to descend into panic, running around crazed, looking for any way to continue, anything at all, because he knew that when the sun set, the vultures would rise. All of them. And the night vultures didn't care if you moved or not. The night vultures just cared how many bones you had and how fast it could shatter them. David kept searching, more and more frantic, but there was no way out other than those cracking stairs. And as the sun began to bow over the horizon, he resigned to his fate. He was going to die here or on the stairs. So he walked out and began to climb. As he went up the stairs, began to crumble beneath him, slowly from the edges. He kept moving, just to the next opening upwards. He could get out there, and then he knew he should be safe there. He could set up a small camp inside the building. But as he walked out into that room, it too was full of vultures. And one of them had already awoken. Then the next, and the next. All of them bathing the room in blue light from their horrendous eyes. They looked around, every last one of them, focusing on David. David panicked. He began to run back to the staircase. But the vultures are faster than David, and stronger. One of them pinned him to the wall and tore at his leg, tearing it cleanly off, as all of them surrounded him, each tearing at something else, pulling his bones and shattering them, consuming them and burning them, but more melting, really. Back at the village, 3 days later, no one wondered why David wasn't there. Everyone already knew. He had aspired to climb the tall spire, the one spire where no one went anymore. He went anyway, and everyone knew what happens when you go to the tall spire. They knew that was it for David. They didn't even question it, nor did they feel sorry for him. That was just the end of David and everything about him. Alright guys, thanks for watching. This story took me a long time, and I know the writing in some spots is atrocious, and I might have messed up a lot of words and stumbled over myself. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for giving it the attention, and thank you guys for growing my channel so much in just the first, 6 days of its existence? Anyway, thank you guys. Bye.